am Orlando Jones, and I just want you to know that the Moana Nui Podcast will be starting soon. Stay tuned, yo.
I'm Veronica Taylor, and from myself and Ash Ketchum, I just want to say, Moana Nui, I choose you!
Aloha, everyone, and welcome to the Moana Nui Podcast. Thank you for tuning in, whether you're tuning in on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, or on LinkedIn. We're so excited for this upcoming episode. But before we kick it off, I just want to remind everybody that is tuning in, right at the bottom of the screen, you will see a QR code in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. You can scan that and you can be able to help out the survivors in Maui. We want to keep people connected to organizations locally in Maui that you can help and support to make sure that your money and your donations is going directly to organizations there that are helping people right on the ground. And with that, if this is your first time tuning in, my name is Dana. I am the other half of the Moana Nui Podcast. My co-host is unfortunately unable to attend. She is enjoying time with her lovely family that is visiting from out of town. So I will be handling the reins today. But for those that may or may not know me, I'm outside of being the other half of the Moana Nui Podcast. I'm also a photographer, a voice actor, event planner, and so much more. And today's episode, we are excited. This time of the month, we have a special segment with Sue Ann Hong from the Center for Asian Pacific American Women. That we help develop your talent. And tonight we have another amazing panel with Sue Ann. So I'm going to bring Sue Ann to the forefront. Hello, Sue Ann.
Hey, everyone. It's great to be here at the Moana Nui Podcast. And as always, I'm always admiring how much you do, Dana. It's like you have 12 jobs.
Yes. And Moana does too.
Exactly. That's why I love you guys so much.
Well, we're very excited about tonight's episode. We're going to be diving in about career management. And first, I'm going to introduce our first panelist. June Jimenez is an organizational development consultant to mission-focused organizations. June's work focuses on the people, systems, processes, and technology needed to help organizations deliver their missions while experiencing tremendous change. June brings over 20 years of professional experience to each engagement gained through her work across nonprofits, government, and private sectors. June is also a mother to a 10-year-old rabbit rouser, partnered to a retired police and military professional, and passionate about social justice. Help me welcome June. Welcome, June.
Thanks so much for having me. I am so excited to be here.
And by the way, let me add my 2 cents about June, who is, by the way, vice chair of the board of our organization. And she's been really leading a lot of work around our mission and our strategic plan. So she's a force. So for those of you who are looking to do that work in your companies, call June.
Appreciate it.
We'll definitely make sure we share contact information that each person is comfortable with, so everybody who is watching, whether live or in the recording, can get in touch with our panelists. And our next panelist I would like to introduce is Sandra Yang Scirpo. is a seasoned professional with a proven track record in driving strategic transformation and fostering business growth. She worked with a diverse portfolio of clients ranging from Fortune 500 executives to small business entrepreneurs, focusing on revenue generation strategy, loyalty programs, and operational excellence. Driven by passion for helping leaders make a meaningful impact, Sandra founded Y4 Consulting. Her mission is clear: to bridge the gap between visionary ideas and effective execution, ultimately delivering quantifiable results for her clients. In addition to her consultant work, Sandra holds a key position leading the go-to market readiness for world's largest consumer cyber safety services and support organization. As the head of strategy, Sandra plays a pivotal role in aligning the organization to achieve key business objectives. And help me welcome Sandra. Welcome, Sandra, to the show.
Hi, Dana. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And our next panelist, we have Gloria Young Adeboi, is a strategic business development manager for Maxim Label and Packaging. Maxim Label and Packaging is a one-stop destination offering brand identity protection and information technology solutions to retailers and major brands. She delivers transformative product digitization solution through labels, packaging, and feature unique digital identifiers combined with product intelligence using cloud and AI technologies. She is a connector of people, processes, technology, packaging, and materials to drive new innovative business process for digital transformation. Most recently, Gloria was the co-chair for the Center of Asian Pacific America Women's 2023 Western Regional Conference in Portland, Oregon, themed AANHPI Women Waken Your Best Self Through Whole Living, designed to empower AANHPI women to achieve their goals through self-care. Help me welcome Gloria. Welcome, Gloria, to the show. And our final panelist, and certainly not least, would like to introduce Larissa Jacobs, is a founder and executive director of Fit Houston, a nonprofit that promotes free physical activity in communities. She has spent the past 2 decades advocating for healthy communities. Larissa is a senior fellow with the American Leadership Forum and alumna of McKinsey and Company Asian Executive Leadership Program. Larissa is on the board of directors for the Houston Tool Bank and the Common Market Texas. She is dedicated to using her professional experience and innovative thinking to support sustainable and stronger communities. Help me welcome Larissa to the show. Welcome, Larissa. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Suen to start our conversation about career management. And it's all yours, Suen.
Thank you so much. Well, first of all, we're going to have some fun tonight with these incredible leaders who are going to share with you their experiences, and some of the path that they've been on, honestly, has not been linear at all. And I think that's important because we can now define success in the way that we want to define it, not somebody else. And so the other thing that I wanted to share is that this team right here, they're all part of the CAPAW community. So as I mentioned, June is part of the CAPAW board as vice chair. Sandra came in through Compassion Circle. Gloria has been with me as volunteer for years. And Larissa is part of the 2023 APALI program. So I'm really excited about this conversation because of the connection that we all have together. So let me start by having them each introduce themselves and talking about their heritage and personal background. And I'm going to ask June to start, and then Larissa, Sandra, and Gloria.
Hi, everyone. My heritage and background, I am the daughter of Filipino immigrants. I was born and raised in New York City. As a result, I was in a part of New York City where there weren't that many Asians. I really grew up around a lot of Puerto Ricans and Dominicans. So with my last name being a Hispanic sounding last name and me looking Hispanic, my ethnic affiliation is very much a Latina. And it's something that I have later come to terms with and really trying to figure out how I can blend my New York experience with my strong family heritage. A key value that I live by is integrity. And it's something that I really try to live through all of my dealings. And I have a high bar for myself. And of course, I fall short, but I try to do that in everything that I do. The name of my firm is called Tama Solutions, and Tama means integrity, because I know what it was like to be inside a nonprofit and desperately needing the help of a consultant and them not being able to deliver. So I try to be that consultant that nonprofits need so that they can do the work that they do best.
I love it. And by the way, is mom of a beautiful daughter. Don't forget that. That's probably one of the most important things, right?
Absolutely. I am a mom of a beautiful 10-year-old daughter and a partner to someone who served our country in many ways.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, June. Larissa.
Well, thank you. Yes, my heritage is I am mixed. I'm biracial. My mom was from a very under-resourced rural part of the Philippines. And my dad was a Holocaust survivor from Frankfurt, Germany. So, we heard a lot of different languages growing up. And I think this might relate to what June was saying. I really assimilated into kind of the broader culture. There were not a whole lot of Filipinos around. We did used to mix with a few families, but generally, if I've said that, my mom's from the Philippines, people are like, we don't even know what that is. So, it's like no one knew what it was. But, we also grew up in a Jewish neighborhood. And so, there's a lot of sense of not ever being Jewish enough. So I kind of grew up with that. And then again, just like June, I kind of look a little bit Latina. So I learned Spanish, and I probably because I heard so much German and Yiddish and also Tagalog and Cebuano growing up. For some odd reason, learning Spanish was just like a total breeze. I'm not perfect at it, but I'm pretty fluid. So I read it, write it, and speak it, which has come in really handy in Houston, Texas. But I think it's been a little bit sometimes confusing for people because they think that I'm Latina when in fact I'm actually API and Jewish. That was a lot, but I'm done.
Well, you can't these days. And it's, I always think about the census where you have to check one box. And frankly, I'm not even sure that's valid anymore. So yes, to your point, you're on many things, and we're going to explore more of that as we have further conversation. So Gloria, how about you? You're on mute, Gloria. All right. While Gloria's figuring out her technical difficulty, let's go to Sandra.
I got it. Sorry.
Okay, yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gloria Adeboi. I'm the Strategic Business Development Manager at Maxim Label and Packaging. I was born and raised in Portland, Oregon. I'm third generation Chinese American. I did all my schooling. My siblings and I were really lucky. We were raised in the same neighborhood. We had all the same friends. And when I went to college, also that first year, my parents decided to open a Chinese restaurant, and we had a great community of school and neighbors and community to be able to grow up with here in Portland. Being one of the fewer Chinese American families, we always felt a great sense of support and community. I went to Portland State University, also stayed in the area. And so what that leads to is like you have like anywhere you go in Portland, it's like between relatives and family and coworkers, you're always running into someone, you know. So it's, while Portland's a city, it always feels like a bit of a small town. But after college, I actually went away and I lived in Japan, and I was participating in the largest exchange program in the world, which is called the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program, and was able to learn to speak Japanese fluently. And then I came back to Portland and started my career in international business, which led me to supplying and producing packaging for some of the largest footwear and apparel companies in the world. And so that's me.
I love, again, it's not a linear path, and there's some unexpected things and you would never know, but talk to people, individuals, right? So this is wonderful. All right, Sandra, what about you?
All right. Well, I'm actually an immigrant. I moved to the United States when I was 11 years old, the oldest of four, the first one to go to college. And, that's been my journey. We relocated to Phoenix, Arizona at the age of 11. And being the oldest, my parents worked in restaurants because, that's what you do when you come here. You should make ends meet for a better life. And I was home, being the oldest, taking care of all my siblings all the way to a 2-year-old, and just was trying to figure things out. And my whole world has changed around me. Didn't know the language, didn't speak it, didn't have any family members, which we were much more close-knit community, obviously coming from Burma. My parents are mixed, so my mom is half Burmese, my dad is Chinese. So it's been an interesting ride of settling in here and trying to figure out who you are while assimilating, because that's what you do, when you come to a new country, is you're trying to fit in. And I came about the Compassion Circle at a time where I thought it was pivotal, and I needed that. I needed those voices and the women to be in the same room to talk about being seen and to know that we have carved out space. And there were a lot of questions about, did I assimilate too much? And what does that even mean? And what does it mean to be AAPI? So there were a lot of those that I think I went through the last couple of years, and on the other side coming out stronger. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. So let's talk a little bit about your career path, since tonight's conversation is really about career management. How did you choose your path, and can you describe a little bit of the path you've been on? And so let's start with Gloria, and then Sandra, Gloria, and then June.
Well, gosh, I think earlier in my life, I didn't really choose a career path. I was pretty lost. I think of myself as a late bloomer. I love languages, and I take to anything linguistic pretty quickly. And just, I guess in kind of like my other life, I would have majored in languages just 24/7 because I enjoyed it so much. But, I kind of wound up very creative. My first love was gymnastics and dance. I was a very creative child, very creative person. But, how do you earn a living, at something like that? So I wound up, oddly enough, I decided to buckle down and get an MBA. And it was hard for me, but I did it, and I did well and all that. And then I was like, well, I don't think I'm ready for like a job type job right away. So I had just had kids, and I had spent also a few years in public school as a teacher. So I did have some work experience. And I decided to go to work for the YMCA, and they immediately put me in charge of these family programs for healthy weight and for, and we learned about evidence-based programs. I didn't even know what that meant. But these were National Institutes for Health programs, CDC programs. And just, I don't know, somehow I wound up managing all the 20 health coaches there. Eventually wound up reporting to the, the CEO. And then I learned about fundraising. I learned about contracts with large hospital systems. And Houston is Greater Houston is such a big city. So I really think so many times I was just like, I don't even know what I'm doing, but I'm having fun doing it. And nobody mentored me. So you're really out there on your own. So I don't know if I chose my career path. It's a very niche thing that I do because I now have my own nonprofit. But I think just along the way, things become clearer. So I think some of us are just late bloomers, and whether it chose me or I chose it, I don't know. All I can say is I am living my purpose, and I do feel pretty authentically in that space every day. So maybe you just figure out what you can tolerate and what you can't. And somehow that shapes you. But that's the best answer I can give. I don't know that I set out and said, I'm going to have my own nonprofit doing free physical activity. I don't know that I thought that when I was young, but here we are.
Well, first of all, who gets up in the morning and goes, I think I'm going to be in a nonprofit? Like when you're, that's not real, right? For part. I mean, most of us are like, what are we doing? I don't know. So I totally can relate to what you're saying, though, because it wasn't clear to me either. So, but the point is you figure it out along the way. And that's the journey part that we want to explore further. All right. So, Sandra, what about you?
Yeah, so probably similar to Larissa, I feel like I was a completely late bloomer. So throughout kind of the last few decades, I always feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so behind. Or I look at other people and I go, wow, they've achieved so much. And I've taken kind of a different route. But I think in the last few years, what I realized is that I've done what I needed to do and I'm completely comfortable with it. So I was a super creative child, always sketching, always drawing. I was doing, paper cutouts, designing clothes and all that stuff. So in high school, before going to college, I thought, I want to be a fashion designer. Like, that's what I want to do. I'm going to go enroll in FITM and do all that. To be perfectly honest, when I found out, I actually in college went to a recruiting event, and it was, I forget what it was, maybe Mervyn's or California or something. They took us out to San Francisco and they were like, the starting pay is like 30 or 28,000 or something. I'm thinking, how do you live on $28,000 in San Francisco? Like, you have to get a 1-bedroom with 10 people. So I think that kind of alerted me to, like, I don't know if this is the way to go. I had a high interest in psychology. So I actually started in psychology as my major. And then I did a study abroad program, which really sort of opened my eyes, changed my life. So for anyone listening out there with kids or kids who are listening, I think do that. It expands your horizon. Don't stay in your bubble. When I came back from that experience, I realized that, I really don't want to go get my master's or my doctorate in psychology, but I really think that I want to get a business degree. So I ended up, because I had gone so far with the psychology degree, I was like, it makes no sense for me to just abandon that. So I ended up double majoring, but the business school was what really sort of propelled me towards possibilities that I don't think psychology did. No offense to anyone out there who's in that space. Personally, for me, I was like, okay, business is where I need to go. Part of it at the time was all about, oh, wow, people are getting like 4 offers in supply chain management. I'm like, that's what I'm going to go do. So I did that. And that really landed me into the spot of like, how do you interview? How do you develop your resume? How do you get in there? And when I was doing my internship, I got opportunities, and I was very lucky where there were other women who, the woman who hired me, she ran the entire Kent Space Center for the aviation warning systems. And she saw something in me that I don't think I saw in myself. So she had me do a lot of things that in that internship that really opened my eyes, like researching contracts and doing various components that I think really sort of awakened something in me to think, oh, wow, like there's so many interest areas that I do have, and these are the things that I can do. So I think there's been those moments. At the time, I don't know that I recognized it for what it was. I think looking back, obviously, I'm like, wow, these people did shape my life or open my eyes to something else. So again, you talked about not being linear. I don't think it's been linear. I mean, I went from then going into procurement, working for Boeing, to jumping into more marketing and loyalty for a really long time. So, and then that's the space that I found myself, was the B2B client management space. Absolutely love it. I think that once you handle clients and been in the hot seat, you can do anything. And the more money they spend with you, the more demanding they are, and the better skills you're set up for yourself. So that's kind of been my path. And I think I'm still exploring still.
I love it. And by the way, I'll have to share with you guys the first time I had to handle a customer complaint in New Jersey, and when I was with State Farm. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm not in the Midwest, people. I'm not in the Midwest. So anyway, Gloria, how about you?
Yeah, this has really jogged my memory, this question of how I got down into this career that I'm in today. And I think my earliest memories are probably like here in the state of Oregon. There are great kind of like conferences and retreats that we were able to go to. The first one was probably in the 6th grade, where we actually got to go to this program that's very well established here. It's called Outdoor School. So we went outdoors for a week, and it was away from your parents, and you're out there with your friends, and you have a counselor who's a high school student, and you get curious about the world, and you get curious about environments that you're not normally accustomed to. And then by the time I got to high school, leadership camps. And then one program that I think that really impacted me was this organization that sponsored a Oregon Girls State, which was basically an opportunity to be able to leave, create 2 different forms of government, and then run. And then hopefully the person that you supported became the governor of the whole state by the end of the week, or this mock state by the end of the week. And those type of leadership camps really inspired me to reach out and learn and kind of grow beyond kind of like where I was. And then that led me to this great curiosity in international business. Also being here, one of the largest companies in Oregon is Nike. And Nike always was participating in the community, always sending people out, and being able to have exposure to executives that actually got to travel to China and Japan and all these different countries, literally very entrepreneurial and being very pioneering in the apparel footwear industry, and being able to learn from them at a really early age really piqued my interest. And so in high school, I actually learned to speak Japanese. Languages, unfortunately, were not as easy for me. And I think a lot of it was a part of that, timidness, and then conformity of not always being really sure, and then also being afraid of making mistakes and being mocked. But after high school, I went into college, and then actually ended up getting accepted to this program that my Japanese high school teacher was involved in, called the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program. And it was a rigorous, competitive process. Over 200 people applied, only about 40 people were accepted. And you were basically placed in a city in Japan, set up with a local government, and you taught English. And you were somewhat of a diplomat, because it was Japan's way to be able to bring in, basically it was internationalization is what they were trying to bring to their individual communities, because a lot of Japanese people didn't travel to the United States and didn't see people of different skin color. But of course, it was also really unique because I'm Asian and I'm in Japan. And so that in itself was a unique experience, to be Asian and exposing Japanese kids to the fact that I'm actually American, and in the United States, not everybody is as blonde and blue-eyed. And so being there, also, I was forced to speak Japanese, so I was making a lot of mistakes. But eventually, by the time I was done, I actually was able to speak fluent Japanese, and it's something, that experience is very near and dear to me to this day. So when I came back, I actually was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? I've had this incredible global experience, and I got to work with people from all over the world, from some of the best universities, and got to see a lot of diplomacy between Japan and the US. And internationalization was actually introduced to us in the fact that not only is it bringing culture and exposure to Japanese in Japan, the hope was that they would instill Japanese culture in us, so that we would go back to our respective countries and share about Japan to, our respective communities. And of course, I had a big network in community. So I'm kind of like a poster child for the JET program, as well as just living and working or even traveling and experiencing Japan. And so I definitely wanted to work in a company that still allowed me to be able to continue that work. So I started in global trade, and I worked with a trading company that actually traded plywood, and then did that for 2 years. And then I ended up finding in the paper, which is going to date me, I actually found an ad in a paper for a job that was doing import-export documentation, which in global trade is needed to be able to bring goods and kind of go through custom border protection to be able to be imported into the United States. And so that started my job of exporting shoe boxes from North America to footwear factories in Asia. And then one day, that footwear brand came to us and said, well, you better figure out how to shorten the supply chain and make these in Asia, or you're not going to have the business anymore. So then started my career in basically learning how to spec boxes, structurally design them, to be able to put the graphics on them, choose the materials, source them, be able to distribute them to the factory so that the right package is at the right place at the right time. And then it also extended into developing relationships with hundreds of factories, hundreds of packaging suppliers, and then also going to conferences, and then eventually leading to driving sustainability and innovation into how do we package all these consumer products and goods around the world, be able to do it in a sustainable and least impact way. And so I became an expert in the industry. But then with sustainability, we were asked to continue to reduce the amount of packaging, but of course the content and the communication increased, which led me to where I'm today, which is basically developing smart packaging using digital identifiers to put onto packages so that we can enable business cases and use cases that we could never enable before. And there's actually a word for it. It's called phygital, which is taking the physical and turning it digital. So that's where I am.
Well, thanks, Gloria. Wow, that's quite a journey. Just starting so early on in your grade school. I mean, I can't, and you can see the path and how it keeps expanding for you. So I'll be curious to see about all of your shifts. So June, tell us about your career path, because you've not had a linear path either.
I haven't. And thank you for letting me go last, because you all have jogged a couple of memories on my end. I'll say a couple of things. My career path, every time I have chosen to do something, it has not worked out for me, but it has been absolutely serendipitous. I'll start in high school. In high school, I ended up with 21 AP credits. I interned at the district attorney's office. I brought mock trial to my high school, and I ended up going to college, and I said, I'm going to be a lawyer. This is what I'm going to do because I'm really good at it and I'm really passionate about it. But because I had a semester and a half of credits, I was taking classes as a freshman that I wasn't supposed to be taking. So all of the public policy courses and the things I needed to do to get it through my major weren't available to me because they were available in the spring or they were only available at certain levels. I ended up taking a lot of business courses in college. And my actual major, I'm laughing, is textiles and apparel management. So
we can talk.
And of course, there was a reason why this panel came together, right?
So, but I was going to be a buyer, right? So I graduated from college and I had to take all of the marketing stats, whatever. And then I went to all of the houses in New York, and I absolutely could care less what the next season's color was. I couldn't care if I bought pink shoes for this store or I bought gloves for that store. It did not matter to me. And I said, this is probably the wrong career for me. So I said, well, now what? I ended up getting recruited by a political campaign out of Mesquite, Texas. I was making $80 and working 80-hour weeks. I had tears in my eyes, and I said, I don't want to do this anymore. So I ended up coming back to New York, working for a city council member who became a state senator. And in doing that, it launched my fundraising career, which is the basis for what I do now. I was able to join a nonprofit that was funded through discretionary funding on the city level that folded because it didn't have enough capital. So I went to the absolute opposite of that. And I went to the richest private school in New York City. And I said, if I'm going to learn how to raise money, I'm going to be raising money from the rich people. And I stood there as they completed a $50 million capital campaign, as they did $3 million in major gifts, as I learned how to deal with really high net worth individuals who had their kids and were able to write checks for $80,000. That was more than what my mother was making a year, and they could just give it to a school. So really learning that and leveling up and figuring out what that looked like, particularly professionally, and then the cultural norms around that is what launched me into fundraising. And then I said, I want to build. And I went to a different school. I got another competency and annual fund. And then I hit the glass ceiling really early because the folks that were directors of development in New York, this was their second, third, or fourth career after they had done something else. So I intentionally said, where can I go that I can advance? And it was Washington, D.C. Per capita, Washington, D.C. has the largest amount of nonprofits in the country. So I came down here and I was able to get my director position. I was able to do it nationally, and I was able to do it for an Asian American organization. And then the crash hit, 2008 hit, and it was awful. And I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. So what else can I do? I ended up becoming a lobbyist for a little bit. And then I became a mother. And becoming a mother and becoming a lobbyist were not congruent. So I ended up also getting laid off from that job and trying to figure it out. And then I said to myself, what is my dream deferred? And like many of you, I went back to business school. I went back and I got my executive MBA with a 1.5-year-old in tow. And I said, if I could do anything right now, what would it be? And someone tapped me on the shoulder and they're like, you'd be really good at consulting. So I went to a Big Four and I did organizational transformation. And what I realized then is, oh my goodness, I've been doing transformations this whole time as a fundraiser. Everyone's like, where's the money? And then I realized that so much of my time was making sure everyone got on the same boat and was rowing in the same direction to the same destinations. Were your programs teams talking to your comms teams, talking to your finance team, talking to your board? Was everyone saying the same thing? Do you have the technology to support things? And then at Deloitte, I just broadened my aperture. I was doing transformations for 600,000 people, 10 million people, figuring out what those impacts look like. And then I said, I want to go back to the sector and I want to do this for nonprofit organizations because frankly, those prices are not attainable to a lot of nonprofits, right? So how can I go back to the sector? My last kind of foray before I went out on my own, I was a VP at a national organization implementing a strategic plan across 165 disparate sites and figuring out what that looked like in both rural America and the major metropolitan areas and everywhere in between, and getting people to somewhat agree on what that could mean and look like together around a mission. And then now I have the opportunity to really work around BIPOC communities, women and children, marginalized communities, LGBTQIA+, social justice organizations that are doing some amazing work coming out of COVID and are really looking to accelerate this very, very needed services and programming that they do for the community. And they just need a little bit of help to buttress up their organization. And that's what I do. I'm happy that I've gotten here. I can't say that I would have gotten here at 18, 21, or even 30. But I'm happy that I'm here now in my 40s.
Well, age is but a number, first of all. And by the way, it's not the age, it's about the experience and what you bring to the table working all those different sectors. I mean, that's huge, especially when, the client understands that you understand what they're going through, right? That's huge. Mm-hmm. So let me ask each of you to give one example of where you made a shift and what was kind of this lead up to that shift. Like what was I want you to share one key factor because I want to make sure we get through some of these other questions. One key factor that really kind of made you shift. So what is that example? So let me go ahead and start with Sandra.
Yeah, I think mine is more recent in the sense that I started Y4 Consulting earlier in this year. And the reason for the shift really has to do with me looking at where I'm at today, what I've done in the corporate space, I've worked in 10 people startups to, people with thousands of employees. What I've always done is being able to kind of connect the dots and attain the goal. So whatever the vision is, and bring that to reality. And I think that what I started to think about the last year in particular was around, what is that runway look like for me? What is it that I want out of it? What is it that I'm passionate about? And then to have the sense of purpose. And I do feel that starting Y4 Consulting had two components, certainly from bringing my skill set to the table, but then making it accessible. So one of the things that I've realized is that people have a hard time from an integration of your vision to reality. And when you look at some of the startups and smaller companies, they struggle in this space, and they're not going to have millions of dollars to go to like a McKinsey to do that work. And I can actually tap into my network and bring subject matter experts to help with execution. So I think there was that developing that help that I saw a need for is one. And I think selfishly, there was also a sense of this purpose of like, what do I want? So 5 years from now, where am I going? And do I stay in this corporate track, or do I want to create something for myself? So there's a bit of developing legacy. It's Y4 Consulting because there's 4 siblings. Our last name is Yang. So I tell my siblings all the time, the name is already there. It's just a matter of when you want to join, and then we can amplify where we go, because all 4 of us are in our own respect successful and doing our thing. And we talk all the time about creating something. So I'm kind of waiting for them to come and join me. My sister's already doing some work in the HR executive recruiting space with us. And I think I just want to create that legacy of like, what can we amplify and feel purposeful that I'm doing something for myself.
So accessibility is, I totally get that, because I deal with the same thing with the Center for Asian Pacific American Women. It's all about access. And the second thing is, it is not selfish to think about what you want, everyone. Okay. It is not selfish. And in fact, that's healthy. And so but unfortunately, a lot of times we wait till in our career to think about that, because we're always serving other people. So I love the fact that you brought that up. June, how about you?
My inflection point was a deep examination of going from external to internal. I was chasing external accolades. I was chasing achievement. I was chasing validation, but that validation came externally. My pivot point was when I realized what I wanted internally and what I wanted my purpose to be and how I wanted to use my talents in the world. And once I got really clear on what I want my purpose to be and how I want to use my talents, it is agnostic to me where I do that. I just want to be able to do it effectively. And that's what caused me to shift directions many, many times in my career.
I love that. It's more of it's almost like a playbook of these are the components, but you could apply that to any industry sector. It's a matter of purpose and passion. I love that. Gloria.
So the first career that I had with, implementing packaging, it was a pretty established company, but there was limitations in regards to their development process and packaging solutions approach. So I left to go work for a startup company that could broaden the service offerings and basically turn conceptual design of packaging. So like a consumer came to us or a brand came to us and said, hey, I want this package. We would be able to turn conceptual design in 24 to 48 hours. And traditionally, when you give a designer or someone time, they'll say, oh, well, give us a month, and it gets done in the last 24 to 48 hours. We tried to shift that all to the beginning, and it was incredible. We got to work at a small startup company. We got to work with Procter & Gamble and solve great, packaging solution projects for them. I got to work with Harry and David. I got to work with Smith & Hawken, a lot of brands that were big kind of in the early 2000s. And it was really amazing. My trajectory and my growth at a startup company to wear multiple hats gave me transparency to be able to see up and downstream of all the components of a business. So that was an incredible experience. But as you can imagine, burning the candle at both ends, we all fizzled and started to burn out. But eventually I was able to go work for a company that actually did food packaging. And that was really new for me. And I was able to learn about organic and kosher and a lot of these certifications and packaging, marking and identification and labeling that I was never exposed to before. I also learned about fulfillment. When you design a package and it takes 30 seconds, but if you redesign that package, and even if it's more sustainable, less material, if it takes 60 seconds, if you just double the time and then you multiply that added cost or all that time across millions of units, it's not a good design. And so I was able to look at fulfillment and the tactile are the aspects of handling the packaging and be able to drive solutions for customers in that way. And then the last one was basically being able to scale a design studio and be able to implement processes across many different countries. That was like amount of experience that only a volume customer could provide to you. But with that experience also comes sometimes envy, and sometimes people can get intimidated by your confidence. And I was kind of rolling down this process of landing clients. And I was the only salesperson that was actually landing it because I had this really rich history and I felt very proud of it. And I would go into meetings and I bring a lot of pride into it. But when you work in a revenue environment and you are kind of always being kind of looked at as being, having a unique experience, some people don't always like that. And sometimes they'll try to start to take things away. And my particular situation was I had an executive that wanted to level set all the salespeople, but I came to the table with a really unique experience. And I also had a unique contract, and they offered me a new contract and they asked me to sign it. And I was like, I'm not going to sign that. That's not as good as the contract that's evergreen that I have. And so we didn't see eye to eye on that. And I just knew that I could leave and be able to take my experience somewhere else, which led me to actually going to a company that when I was able to look at sustainability and reduce packaging, brands were always wanting more content and more communication. There was more regulation and more compliance. And so there was actually a digital trigger that actually could take the image of a picture. And just like how you can scan a QR code, you could take your phone and you could scan it. And so I actually went to that company and I learned all about digital triggers, how you can embed it into packaging, how you can take hardware like handheld devices and other types of vision systems and scan it. And then once you can get that data, what you can do with that data can digitally transform a company to be able to make them more profitable, make them more sustainable, or create, greater value and connection to be able to grow their business. And so that experience in itself was, every single time I left a company, there was fear, there was questioning, but I really got to the point where it's like when opportunity presents itself or something changes and you're getting to the point where you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, just to move forward. And that's kind of where it's kind of the shifts in my career have helped me grow, even in the points of like fear and intimidation and uncertainty.
So one of the things that I'm hearing from Gloria is this constant curiosity. Every time you move, there's some you're expanding your knowledge, your depth of knowledge, and that's really adding to your portfolio, which is why you ended up with the unique experiences that you had, because you're expanding constantly.
Yeah,
I love that.
Sometimes we get
and to your point,
right?
That could cost. Yes, I agree. So, Larissa, what about you?
Well, gosh, I think that I don't know if you all can relate to this feeling of just kind of tucking under sometimes that we do when we work in a company. And so, I think in whatever way I was raised, whatever messaging I got from my parents who survived terrible war, World War II, my mom in the Philippines, and just, I think just the Japanese occupation there, she had seen some really difficult things. And then, of course, my dad surviving the Holocaust, there was this messaging that I was raised with was don't try too hard, don't speak up, be quiet, sort of like knuckle under a lot. So, and I guess I was just a little bit, confident enough as a kid that they were always trying to I feel like they were always trying to get me to be quiet and settle down. And so I kind of, that was an unfortunate message because I think working in companies, I strived to be the most efficient, the one with all the answers, but that didn't talk too much. I would go into meetings with all men. And I would come out of the meetings and sometimes other women would say, cause as I would rise up in my career, they say, wow, what's it like being the only woman in the room? You must, I said, well, frankly, my technique is to be very quiet and only speak when I think that, they're going to listen to something I have to say. And then later I thought that's crazy, but that's kind of how I survived for a few years and I kept getting promoted. But all the while I kept thinking, I'm just the very best at playing second. So there's a lot of ego there too, thinking, why am I quietly obedient? And why am I always the one that has all the files? Sorry for the noise. Clearly there's another boss here. That's all I want to say. But, I think I kind of vacillated between be a good girl, be quiet, have all the files in order, have all your answers, bring in funding. I did fundraising, bring in those contracts. If you don't know what you're doing, you'll figure it out through very, very hard work. So, and I was also a workaholic and I still am. But I think, I was invited just to the right tables that eventually I kind of let that other voice say, hey, why not? Why not be fully in charge? You don't need to tuck yourself under someone else's wing anymore. And so that's super scary. I was invited onto, I had spent time at the YMCA of Greater Houston and I had worked my way up until I was reporting to the CEO. And then I took on a big portfolio at my next job as a vice president of health strategies at the American Heart Association. And so then I was invited to so many of these convenings and tables and, I entered a pitch competition and I won. And it didn't come with any funding, but I had this team I put together and they were motivated. And so was I. So I literally, this is just bootstrapping. That voice was like, you don't have to play second. You don't have to be the good girl. You don't have to not try. You don't have to be quiet. You don't have to sit down. You don't have to not be noticed anymore. So I just took this concept and I started pitching and I started calling people that I thought would want to fund it. And I quickly got seed funding and started this nonprofit. So, I don't know if it was just maybe me just figuring out, you're going to be very uncomfortable while you're learning. And, Gloria, you talk about a little bit of fear. And for me, it's a sense of self-doubt, but I know I had a couple of panic attacks probably in there somewhere, but I did it and it's fine. You adjust, you pitch yourself into the woods. You don't know what you're doing. You're terrified. You're feeling like an idiot. And somehow the ship rights itself and you learn and then you're kind of comfortable and it's okay. And the funding comes. So, that's, I guess, kind of my experience. I was definitely in the room with the right people at the right time. I have very good relationships. And for this, I'm extremely grateful because you don't do anything alone. And, I asked for a lot of connections and things. And so that's, a little vague, but that's kind of my experience.
Well, I love the fact that you had the tenacity, right, to say, I don't need to play second fiddle here any longer. I love that. And at the end of the day, I'm curious, what gave you the gumption to say, maybe to go against the grain, because I got a lot of messaging from my parents, my mom, especially when I was getting ready to leave a corporation. She texted me and said, your dad and I talked about it and we think you should stay, and how about no? And so you've got to have something in your, strong enough in your own voice. You got to have enough confidence to actually say no to all these people that are telling you don't do it. Mm-hmm. How do you do it? I'm just going to open this one up. How did you do it?
I think for me, I was offered some very big jobs to stay. They were, I was getting ready I was on the pathway to take a large national position. And I fell in love with community. I was working in very under-resourced communities. And there was it's just, I'm of two minds. I always greatly admired Mother Teresa and people that give like that, but then I also have an ego, and I liked my vice president title, and they were going to give me a bigger title and a lot more of this and that. And it just, at the end of the day, it's who am I? How many years do I have left? Is there something that I could do that would actually serve the world in a greater way? And am I willing to take a pay cut? And my poor husband was like, "You're going to do what? You're going to make how much?" So, but I think we see that it's making a difference. And so, I think it's just sort of, what do you have to give? How do you want to give it for the rest of your life? What is your life made of? And what is your purpose? And this is it. I found it. So not every day is great, but most days are pretty awesome.
I love that. To Sandra's point about the legacy piece, right? Building legacy. Why 4, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, who else? Who else says, how do you like take all those voices and put it to the side so you can follow what you need to do?
Yeah, I mean, I can comment on that. I think I'm in an odd position probably in this group because I have a day job still and I'm trying to do this thing, right? And it takes, I was so scared when I was thinking about even pulling my website together, and I did it all on my own. And I'm like, I've never developed a website before, but how hard could it be? But you know what was really hard was actually putting yourself out there. So at the time that I was going to push out my website, I was like, oh my gosh, you're fearful that you're going to be judged and ridiculed when you put yourself out there. And then one of the things that I started to do on that was also, how do I balance between my day job, because I still need that, and while I'm trying to develop this, and I'm taking on a lot more strategic advisory type roles, because that's what I can do at this point while I establish a team. And everything's been kind of, developing pretty nice. I'm happy with the progress. There's still a lot more to go. But I think there was also this fear of like being judged. There was also this fear of like, what's my company going to think and feel, and perception of like, you're trying to balance a lot of things. So there were those elements that were at play. And I think I've always been the type of person, I don't have to get it 100% right before I just do it. Then that's the catalyst for me to go, okay, iteration. It's an iterative process. If I don't like my website, I can push out another change and it's totally fine. Like, don't worry about it. Even I had gotten off social media over a year ago because I just was like, I don't need that noise. I deleted every single one of my accounts. And then all of a sudden when I was doing this, I was like, oh, I kind of need a social media presence, and I got to build from scratch. Awesome. Like, I have a whopping 30 some odd people who follow me right now on Instagram, And so that's also like kind of, you're going, oh my gosh, like what are people going to think? But everyone starts from somewhere, right? So there's all of those elements at play. And then even when I started putting out content, my thought was going back to the whole, like, creating service and making accessibility, thought leadership. I feel like I'm connected to lots of amazing people. I started with Leadership Roundtable several years ago before I even publicly started podcasting. And I just love bringing people together and sharing thoughts. So when I started to do one-on-one interviews, it was with the idea of like, what can people learn from like our own journeys? And even putting that out was like nerve-wracking. I was just like, the first podcast, I'm going, okay, I don't even know how to edit. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm using this like freemium, recording thing, and I'm just going to try it out. And then putting it out there, you're always wondering, is someone going to judge you and say something? But I think always being able to push past the fear. And then what I have found 6, 7, 8 months in is that, oh my gosh, I find it so empowering. You find your point of view, your voice in a different way than when you work for somebody else. And there is the sense of you just developing and kind of coming into it and honing your value proposition. And I am like, I work my day job. All my teams are in Europe. So I work super, super early. And then I use the rest of my day and do nothing but look at how I'm going to scale Y4. And I can't sleep because I'm just super excited about it. I'm obsessively always working on it. And I think that's where I go, you know what, if nothing else happens, I mean, the fact that I feel this passionate, it's the right thing to do. And then I can always pivot, just like many, many other times I've done. And I think it's also knowing your value. Like, I'm not scared and I'm not coming from a place of scarcity. So if this job went away one day, fine, like I'll figure something else out. I've always wanted to be in the C-suite, and the closer I get to it, I really sometimes do wonder, like, is that really what I want? And that was, I think, also another catalyst for this change. So yeah, lots of discoveries.
I love it. I love it. Yes, we think we know what we want, and then once you look at it, you're like, oh, no, maybe not so much. All right, so 30 seconds each. June, Gloria.
I think making sure that in a revenue role, if I could not advocate for myself, how could I advocate for this company's customers? And I just knew that I needed to stand up for myself. And it was really interesting because initially they were like, wow, the audacity for Gloria to stand up for herself. And then when I put it into a business context and I said, listen, if I can't do this for myself and I can't share with you why I'm doing this for my own revenue or my own income, how can I do this for your company? And so that was like kind of like for me why I was standing up. And so when they still stuck to their guns, I'm like, all right, I'm moving on. And so hopefully that they would respect me for making that decision for myself, my family. And I would hope that any sales rep or any rep that's representing any company in the company that I work for would also stand up. So
I love that, because the whole what's in it for me, and then there's nothing wrong with that. And by the way, the answer is the answer. It can be yes or no. They don't have to, right? Yeah. So I love the fact that you made the choice to go and do something different. So that's awesome. And finally, June.
I just listened to my gut. That's what I did. I've always been daring. My line, when I pledged the sorority, my line name was Daring. I've always listened to that. And then as I went through my career, the training you get teaches you to no longer listen to your gut. And once I got back to listening to my gut and listening to what my own intuition was telling me, I knew I had to make a pivot. And each time that I've made a pivot, it's been a deep introspection into who I am, what I am, and what I want to do.
I love that. Listen to your gut, everyone. We all have that gut instinct, but you got to quiet your mind enough to listen, right? So I told you, they're incredible, aren't they? And the bottom line is we need to make sure to, as Dana said, what you're comfortable with is sharing your information if you want people to connect with you. So Larissa, real quick, contact information.
Yes, well, we want everybody to follow us at Fit Houston 1, and then look at our website, fithouston.org. Fit Houston 1.
All right. 1. That's easy to remember. Gloria.
One thing to remember?
No, contact.
Oh, gloaaa@hotmail.com.
All right. glow888@hotmail.com. Sandra. You're on mute.
Oh, sorry about that. You can reach out to us, check out our website, www.y4consulting.com, and you can even book a complimentary meeting on there as well.
Yes, and take a look at the website since she created it herself. June.
You can find me on LinkedIn, June Jimenez.
Woohoo. With that, let me turn it back over to Dana. Dana, another amazing.
Yes. As you all can see, and just like Sue Ann said, we have such powerhouses right with us today. These women are phenomenal and they're doing some amazing things. And I know each of us have had our own journeys within our careers that we had to pivot and U-turn and make a right turn. And then sometimes we had to recalculate as we were finding our way. And I love the information that each of them shared. Definitely, if you're watching it on the replay or live, definitely follow each of them on either social media, go to the website, reach out to the organization, especially if your company, your organization could utilize working with them. Definitely reach out. Or if you're looking for speakers for your company, especially for your ERGs, definitely reach out to each of them to try to book them, because trust me, Sue Ann knows I'd like to do that. So ladies, be on the lookout if I reach out to you. But I like to thank each of them for their time and also giving their experiences and their wisdom to share on tonight's panel. And of course, we always like to welcome them to come back to the Moana Nui podcast whenever you have anything you would like to share with our audience. So definitely feel free to reach out to us. But everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you all have a great evening. And we look forward to you tuning in with us next Thursday. Of course, we're live at 7 p.m. Eastern and 8:30 p.m. Eastern every Thursday. Thank you so much, everyone. And you all have a great evening. Bye, everyone.
So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will.
If this the land of the free, it was a freedom then, when they annexed Hawaii and called it Cedar Lands, without any type of payment and no signing off. Called themselves the Republic in 1894. 1.2 million acres overtaken from the native Hawaiians. When they resisted, the West retaliated in violence and erasure. The Hawaiian language was banned as part of colonialism's plan to expand, yeah.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No work out for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.
So if we put Hawaii into perspective, well, Black and Asian history is interconnected. Considering the fight with the Pacific, then of course, versus Asia, they was treated as a middleman for war, but didn't let the Western colorism run its course, cause dark skin was a sign of dignity to core. The land was taken in the name of capitalism, when prior to it was an actual kingdom. Clap back at the system.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No work out for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.